If you'll be entertaining during the holiday season, you probably plan on serving snacks. But you don't want to use just any dish, you want something to heighten the festive mood. Today's project is a Christmas tree-shaped snack or candy dish, the perfect solution to your problem. While crafting this practical item in your shop, you'll learn how to use angle cutting to create a layered dish from a single piece of wood. Are you intrigued? Join me in my shop and we'll get started. It's the middle of November and I'm trying to catch up on possible new seasonal items for the holiday, for Christmas obviously. And I ran across this on Steve Good's website the other day, a Christmas tree shaped candy dish. I don't care for the bow, so I'm not going to make the bow. Steve Good's patterns don't usually include an instruction page, but this one does for a good reason. You need to test the cutting angle on your scroll saw table to make sure the layers move slightly, providing a piece with lots of depth from only one piece of wood. You can see my test cuts at the top edge of the wood. The angle that worked best to give me the movement I wanted was about 2 degrees. I'm making this tray from poplar as I intend to paint it, and poplar takes paint well. The plans call for 3/4 inch thick material, and my rule of thumb for choosing the correct size blade for any project caused me to select a number 9 Pegasus modified geometry blade. For a complete discussion on blade size choice, see my video with links on the screen and in the description. I drilled pilot holes directly in each of the cut lines. One of the things that's unusual about this product is that there are no interior waste cuts. The only waste will be the wood outside the project lines, and that piece will be large enough to save for a future project. I slowed the video down to show you that I still make mistakes, even with thousands of hours of experience on the scroll saw. As I came to the first corner and attempted to make the very sharp turn, the blade came loose from the lower blade holder. You can see that this startled me, and I jumped slightly and took my foot off the dead man switch, stopping the saw immediately. This is a very tight turn, and there's no waste area to maneuver the blade around, so the process puts a lot of pressure on the blade. I evidently didn't have the lower blade holder tight enough, so the blade was pulled out of the holder. In the process, the blade was also severely bent. It was wedged tightly into the cut, so I needed a pair of pliers to pull it out. I threaded a new blade through the pilot hole, and I could move back to where I left off quickly. As I already mentioned, there's no waste area to use for maneuvering on this cut, and I need to make the turn as cleanly as possible to avoid leaving a noticeable gap in the corner after the layer is pushed down. All the corner turns will be tight, and since the whole project is cut on an angle as well, I wouldn't consider this a beginner-level project. You need to be able to make extremely tight, clean turns for this project to turn out well. The turns along the sides of the tray are not as tight as the ones in the corner. I cut to the point where the line changed direction, and then I eased up the pressure on the blade slightly. I slowly pivoted the workpiece to the new cutting direction, then put pressure back on and started cutting again. The next turn along the side was even more manageable, so I made it with no trouble and then continued up to the point at the top. When I reached the turn at the top, I was able to make it with no problems. I slowed the video down to half speed and pulled in for a close-up so you could see the process better. You should be able to tell that I cut right to the point and then backed off slightly on the blade. There was room in the kerf that had just been created to swivel the workpiece to the new direction, and then I started cutting again. I cut down the second side and ended where it started at the bottom of the tree. I loosened the blade from the upper blade holder and removed the workpiece. Now it was time for the test. If the cut was made from a proper angle, when I tried to push out the piece I just cut, it should only go out halfway before it stuck. The piece will, however, come out entirely if pushed from the bottom up. I removed it so it would be out of the way while cutting the next layer. There are 2 layers left to cut, and they'll be just like the first layer, so there's nothing new to show here. I cut the second layer, then the third, and then it was time to move on to the outside cut. Before I started the outside cut, I had to reset the table for 0 degrees of tilt or a 90-degree cut to the wood. This cut is easy. There are no sharp angles to cut, nothing but curves all the way around. For this reason, the cut went quickly because I didn't have to slow down to make tight turns like I did on the inside layers. Once completed, there was a nice-sized piece of waste on the outside, which I set aside in my small pieces bin for use in some future project. With all the pieces cut, I pulled off the scroll saw tape and pattern. Next, I inserted the middle layers from the top. Once I had them in place, I picked up the dish and pushed the layers down to see what the final version would look like. I made 2 of these, and for the first one I drilled the pilot holes in the lower right corner. I staggered the pilot holes near the lower left corner for the second. I haven't decided yet whether I want to use wood filler for the holes or if I'll just leave them. I'm also trying to decide whether to use an oil finish or to paint these, but I need to do the glue up first. I started the glue up with the middle layer, which becomes the bottom layer when pushed out as far as it will go. I squeezed a bead of glue onto the top edge of the layer because that was the part that would make contact with the next layer. I spread the glue with my finger, inserted the layer into the next one and pressed it down firmly, and removed those 2 layers from the assembly. Finishing the rest of the assembly was a matter of repeating these steps. There was no practical way of clamping this, but I was confident that by pressing the layers firmly together, the friction fit would be enough to hold the layers together while the glue dried. As you can see, I opted for the green paint finish. To me, this looks more natural than the wood with an oil finish. The spray paint should be food safe once dry, but if the tray is used for wrapped candies or nuts in the shell, that won't matter anyway. Cutting on an angle to create layers is an exciting technique. If you decide to make this snack tray, make some test cuts first to ensure the angle creates the proper reveal. I appreciate and will respond to any comments. A like will help get this video suggested to others. If you haven't already done so, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever a new video is released. But you don't have to wait for a new release. Some suggestions for what to watch next are on the screen now.